Hello, everybody. Welcome to Edu 531, or the Facilitating Learner Centered Teaching. I am Miss Roselle, and I will be your teacher for today. Today, we are going to discuss the continuation of LCP principles. Again, when we say LCP, these are principles which talks about the effective way of facilitating a learner-centered classroom or focusing on the individual differences of your students as you give them the quality education. So for this module, we are going to discuss about the learning principles on developmental, social, and individual differences. In the previous video and module, we talked about the cognitive and metacognitive and the affective factors. And here we will continue with our next lesson. Before we proceed with the discussion, allow me to introduce to you our learning outcomes. First one, we have here apply the principles learned in specific situations, specifically inside the classroom. And second one, explain the development and social factors and individual differences that influence learning. Now, let's begin our lesson. First one, we have here the developmental and social factors. From the word itself, developmental, these are whoop, together with individual differences, these factors are considered as critical factors in the capacity of learners to engage learning. When we say development, it talks about your heredity. It talks about your improvements. And we have your social factors. When we say social, it pertains other people. It involves it talks about the influence of other people or socialization in order for you to learn something. So let's try to look into the LCPs under these factors. So the first one, we have your LCP number 10. LCP number 10 talks about developmental influences on learning. So, what does it say? It says that learning is most effective when differential development within and across physical, intellectual, emotional, and social domain is taken into account. What does it mean? It means that mas mapapadali yung learning process kung you are also considering yung physical, intellectual, and emotional factors ng yung mga students. So if you are a teacher, if you wanted to provide quality and effective learning to your students, try to look into are they okay? So that's emotional. Can their friends help them? Are they sociable? Do they learn alone? Do they learn with other people? That's social. Physical. Are they healthy? Are they feeling well? Baka kasi masakit yung ulo nila. Or probably they have a fever. So you need to look into those aspects because that's why if you happen to observe, some schools are offering some feeding programs because they believe that a child cannot really learn effectively if he or she is hungry. So, the child's stomach must be full first. So, intellectual. Kaya ba ng mga mag-aaral mo yung level na pinapagawa mo? O baka naman the activity is very difficult for your level. For example, your students are grade 1, but then again, your task is for grade 6. So, how do you expect your students to perform well? So, next one. As individuals develop, there are things or different opportunities and constraints for learning. As we grow older, as one progress from one level to another, there are different hindrances, and there are also a lot of opportunities for you to showcase your learning. Mm, uh, Nagiging mas mahirap siya as you progress. So do not expect na same difficulty si grade 1 hanggang grade 6. May mga pagkakaiba talaga kasi nga it is improving. Then, learning is most effective when differential development, as what I have said. You need to consider the differences of your students or the developmental level of your students. Kaya ba nila o hindi? And because learning sometimes will not happen because of mismatch between learning activities and learners developmental stage. Oh, maganda nga yung activity mo. Ang ganda ng naiisip mong activity, pero hindi yun bagay sa level ng mga students mo. At the end of the day, that is useless. Walang halaga yan. Kasi it did not help your students learn something. For example, you want your kindergarten students to have a role play about Romeo and Juliet from the lines of Shakespeare. Yung talagang full sentences. So you think they can deliver that? No. Imagine, again, remember, your students, you need to consider the level of your students, the intellectual level of your students, the developmental level of your students. Gusto mong sumayaw yung mga mag-aaral mo, pero di naman sila marunong sumayaw. How do you think they will be able to achieve what you want them to do? So, teachers are persons and professionals who should be knowledgeable of the various developmental milestones of your learners. So, let's say for example, in terms of yung mga may anak or sa child, di ba? Yung mga bata, do not expect a 1-year-old to immediately run, 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 or to immediately jump, 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 jump. But try to look into what are the things what are the things that that child in that level can accomplish. Do not expect the grade 1 student to write a very lengthy essay because that is not within the developmental milestone of that student. So again, consider the developmental levels and milestones of your students so that there will be effective learning. So, next one we have here, principle number 11, social influences on learning. Again, when we say social, it pertains to interaction. It pertains to interaction with other people. Learners, learners to teachers, learners to parents, and many more. According to this principle, learning can be enhanced when the learner has an opportunity to interact and to collaborate with others on instructional tasks. As the famous saying goes, no man is an island. One needs to learn from another people. Your classmates are there to help you. During class activities, do not be a freeloader. Dapat may ambag ka. Kasi nga, one person doesn't know everything. One person learns from the other also. So, you get to learn something from your friends, and at the same time your friends learn something from you. So it's a give and take process. So, what does it mean? In this domain or in this principle, we are reminded of the collaborative or collaboration skill. So, ano nga ba si collaboration skill? Si collaboration skill is a 21st century skill which implies that all learners should learn the skills of working with others in an instructional setting. So it means that dapat matuto kang makihalubilo sa iba at you should work with them. Again, kasi in order for you to survive in this world, you need to collaborate with others. You need to talk. You need to ask them something. You need to ask their help. If you don't know something, you need to ask it. Next, collaborative skill is also an ability which will prepare our student to real world where they are expected to interact with other people. If you go to the market, hindi naman basta-basta ka lang kukuha ng gusto mong kunin or bilihin. You get to ask also. Kailangan mong magtanong uh, sa 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 sales lady if magkano to, ano to, and so on. And how will you be able to get information if you will not interact with other people? Just like just like if you wanted to get to know a person, how will you be able to capture the interest of that person if you don't even have the guts to approach that person? And another one we have here, it encompasses social interactions, interpersonal relations, and communications shown in group works, group dynamics, as well as group tasks. So, whatever you have observed in a group activity where one shares one idea to another, nag-uusap kayo, nagbabahagi kayo ng inyong mga nalalaman, that is collaboration. So these are again the principles under this developmental and social factors. First one, developmental influences on learning. You should know whether your students are ready physically, emotionally, and uh, intellectually. And we have here social influences. The way people or the way your learners interact with other people also influence their learning. If you are shy, the tendency is that you don't get to go out from your comfort zone. So mas limited yung nalalaman mo kasi nga shy ka. You don't interact with others. But if you learn to interact with other people, if you talk with other people, the big tendency is that you will learn a lot from them. Now let's go to the last domain of the LCP principles. We have here the individual differences factors. So ano nga ba to? This one talks about the differences of our learners. As they say, no one is alike. One is different from another. So, ikaw, may katangian kang di makikita sa iba. You have your own individuality. There's no, you have your own style, you have your own likes and dislikes, and people should accept your individuality. So, let's try to go over how these factors affect the learning of our students. First one, we have your individual differences in learning. So what does it mean? First, individuals are born with and develop their own abilities and talents. So, nung ipinanganak ka, you have your own talent. May kakayahan ka. And you need to develop that one so that you get to share it with other people. So you need to nourish it. And the role of the teacher is that educators need to help students examine their learning preferences and expand or modify them if necessary. Since learners are different, learners have different talents and skills. So ikaw, bilang teacher, you need to help your learner examine kung ano talaga yung gusto niya. You need to encourage your students to show what they have got, to show what they have, to share their talents. Do not discourage your learners, but motivate them. Okay? And we have here learners have different strategies, approaches, and capabilities for learning that are a function of prior experience and heredity. So again, go back to the simple thought of this principle. May iba-iba tayong kakayahan. We have different ways on approaching things. For example, there is a problem. You encountered a life problem. May mga tao na umiiyak sila pag may problema sila. May mga tao na parang wala lang. Again, that situation shows individual differences. That's how the person cope with his problem. Let him be. If that person wanted to cry because he got 1 point wrong in the exam, let him be. Do not invalidate the opinion, not opinion. Do not invalidate the emotion of that person. Do not laugh. Wag mo siyang tawanan. Just because umiyak siya, kasi may 1 point wrong siya, tinatawanan mo siya. No, that's wrong. You are not respecting the individual differences of that student or that person. So, next, diversity is very natural. When we say diversity, it means difference. Iba yung gusto mo, sa iba, iba rin yung gusto niya. Parang love. Okay, next. Learning environment is the best example. In a certain classroom, you get to see a lot of learning styles. You get to observe different types of learners. Inside the classroom or inside a specific section, may mga mag-aaral na very studious. May mga mag-aaral na very serious in terms of studying. Meron ring mga happy-go-lucky. Meron rin yung iba yung priority. Dota, what else? Probably internet, Facebook, or whatever. So, inside the classroom, there are differences. Or your students are basically examples of diversity because each learner has its own learning style. Some people or some students would like to study in a quiet area. Some students would like to study with music. Some would like it with candies or something to eat. Some would like to go to the beach, to the mountain, and so on. And these uh, learning styles and talents are product of the experiences and heredity of the learners. So last one, another one we have here learning and diversity. As what I have said, the same basic principles of learning and motivation and effective instruction apply to all learners. So, bawat isa ay magkakaiba. And learning is most effective when differences in terms of linguistic, social, cultural, and social backgrounds are taken into consideration. Mas may natutunan or matutunan yung mga mag-aaral mo kung you are also considering na different sila from each other. Do not assume that your students are all equal. So, for example, may task ka. Do not assume na everybody will finish it. Do not assume that everybody will understand it. Kasi nga, probably your task is only for this group of students. Probably your task is not effective for the other group of students. So, according to this principle, dapat mong siguraduhin na kung ano man yung approach mo or kung ano mang activity na ibibigay mo inside the classroom or in the teaching and learning process, you are also considering na iba-iba yung gusto ng mga mag-aaral mo. That is diversity. And in diversity, we have your multicultural teaching. In this one, teachers are encouraged to try to look into or consider the linguistic, cultural, and social background of your students. So be sensitive also to the examples that you will give. And sometimes language can be a barrier in learning. Kasi nga iba-iba yung level ng mga naiintindihan ng mga mag-aaral mo. If you speak only in straight English but your students cannot understand it, so there is no learning. If you will speak only in Bisaya but you have your students who are Tagalog or Filipino, who speak in Filipino, so there will be barriers. And sometimes, because of language barriers, students cannot express themselves freely or properly. And learner material is not related to social context. And we have here, that's why, anong gagawin mo if may ganito kang situation? Dapat there is contextualization and localization. Dapat instead of giving examples na apple, orange, why not use guava, mango? Those are easily seen in the Philippines. So dapat if it is localized and contextualized, madaling makikita or yung mga bagay ay madaling nakikita ng mga mag-aral mo. You are trying to bring the classroom or the community inside the classroom. Huwag ka nang maghanap ng iba. For example, your lesson is about president. Huwag mo nang gawing example si si Barack Obama, meron naman tayong president sa Philippines na mas local and contextualized sa ating mga students. So use that. And we have here, we are trying to promote inclusive education in allowing our students or in respecting our students' diversity. Ano ang inclusive education? I know you're familiar with no one is left behind. So that's inclusive education. It means one is welcome and respected. One is different, but it is welcome and respected. So, walang maiiwan. Walang left behind or behind. And last one, we have here standards and assessment. So what does it mean? Assessment provides important information to both the learners and the teachers at all stages. So, si assessment ang nagiging batayan whether you have achieved what you wanted to achieve in that certain lesson, or you have achieved what you needed to do in that certain session. And setting appropriately high and challenging standards and assessing learner as well as the learning progress, including diagnostic tests, are integral parts of the learning process. So, anong ibig sabihin yan? Dapat may standards ka. Dapat may learning outcomes ka. May mga objectives ka. Para alam mo kung ano yung gagawin nila. Or para alam ng mga students kung ano yung gagawin nila. Include diagnostic. Know the level of your students. Do not assume things. Know your students first. Okay. Next one we have here, we have the concept assessment and evaluation. Magkaiba si assessment at si evaluation. Kung sinasabi mong assessment, this is the gathering of data. For example, you will give quiz. Magpapa-quiz ka. Nakuha mo yung score ng students mo. That is assessment. When you say evaluation, you are trying to judge the result or interpret the result of your assessment. Again, nagpa-quiz ka. That's assessment. Nakuha mo yung score ng students mo. So, in evaluation, you will understand the result of the assessment. The result of the assessment revealed that the scores of the students, majority, 4 over 10. So, you will write in your evaluation, the students failed. Kasi nga, 50% eh. So, 4 out of 10. So, that's not a passing score, that's a failing score. So, probably, you can say also in the evaluation that students did not understand the lesson. So, interpretation of the assessment. And assessment could be done before, that's diagnostic. During, you can ask question to your students when you talk something. And after the lesson, there is a quiz. And we have here, it's formative if it's short term, and summative if it is broad or mahaba yung coverage. So si formative yung quizzes every day, si summative pwede yung exams. Okay, and that's it for, we have here the LCP principles or the learner-centered psychological principles. Now, allow me to briefly introduce to you the summary of the 14 principles distilled in 5 areas by Alexander and Morphy. So, what are the 5 areas which summarizes the 14 learner-centered psychological principles? First, knowledge-based. Anong ibig sabihin nito? One's knowledge serves as the foundation of all future learning. Pag may natutunan ka, pag may stock knowledge ka, magagamit mo yon sa mga dapat mong matutunan in the future. For example, if you were in elementary, you have understood how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers. When you go to high school, and then there is binomial and so on and so forth, but you have mastered already the operations, the 4 basic operations, mas alam mo kung paano isosolve yung higher level na problems kasi nga you have idea, you have the foundation. Another example, if you know how to read the ABCD, the syllabication, the vowel, the consonant, you know how to read that one. So when you reach high school and ipapabasa kayo ng isang libro, mababasa mo yun. Kasi nga alam mo yung basic. So that's number one, knowledge base. If you have if you know something, if you have the basic or the foundation, you will get to learn a lot of things. You will use that learning in the next. Then we have your strategic processing and controls. Learners can develop skills to reflect and regulate their thoughts and behaviors in order to learn more effectively. So what does it mean? Dapat there is self-reflection. Dapat ikaw mismo at the end of the day, tinatanong mo yung sarili mo, kamusta ka? May natutunan ka ba ngayon? Ano yung dapat kong gawin para mas matutunan yung aralin namin? And you should process your emotion. Kasi kung alam mo, kung confident ka within yourself, if you know what you know, if alam mong may natutunan ka at di mo to naiintindihan, if you will recognize that within yourself, mas magiging madali yung pagkatuto. Motivation and affective factor. Factors such as intrinsic motivations, reasons for wanting to learn, personal goals, and enjoyment of learning tasks all have a crucial role in the learning process. What does it mean? The higher the motivation, the higher the learning. The higher the learning, the higher the effort. The higher the motivation, the higher the effort. If your students are really motivated by themselves and for themselves, not yung ibang tao ang nagmo-motivate sila, sila mismo sa kanilang mga sarili ang nagmo-motivate sa kanilang mga sarili para mag-aral, mas madali at mas effective yung teaching and learning process. So, wag mong pilitin yung mga student mo. Dapat sila mismo magkagusto sa proseso ng pagkatuto. Fourth one, development and individual differences. Learning is a unique journey of each person because each learner has his own unique combination of genetic and environmental factors that influence him. Going back again, no one is alike. Everybody is different from one another. Probably one likes to eat while learning. The others want to study in silence. The other wanted to play in music. And again, let them be because ika nga may kanya-kanya silang diskarte. Bakit nagkaganyan? Because of their genetic and environmental factors. So, another example, may mga mahilig sa music, may mga magagaling sa English, may magagaling sa math. Let them be because that's how unique they are. So do not compare yourself with the other, but accept who you are. Learn to live for yourself. Learn to discover more yourself, your true potential, and not the other people. Okay? And lastly, we have your situation or context. Learning happens in the context of a society as well as within an individual. If nakaka-relate yung mga students, mas natututo sila. For example, in using Bisaya, kasi nga nakaka-relate, if you speak in Bisaya, the students will understand it. The students can learn easier because they can relate to it. If you will give an example about fruits, if it is apple, probably some will find it hard to understand it. But if you will say guava or mango, probably Filipino learners would easily determine it or identify it because again, mas mas easily nila nakikita yung guava kesa kay apple. If you are in the far-flung areas, okay? So, that's situation or context. Localize the setting. Do not use Barack Obama as example for president. Use Rodrigo Duterte as one. Do not use Sonye Jen as example for actress. Why not use Catherine Bernardo? Mas nakaka-relate sila doon. Okay? And that ends our session for the learner centered psychological principles.